lot, I'm going to help you do some things to help reduce those costs, because it's really pretty affordable if you do it right. First thing we got to check, we got to figure out is how much ink are we using. So we're going to use the cost estimator tool in Garment Creator. And if you follow me over my computer here, I'll show you what that's all about.
So here is our artwork. Now the way the 2100 works, it calculates cost based on volume of ink consumed. So the more ink you use, the more it's going to cost. Doesn't matter how many colors are in the job. Doesn't matter if it's 1 or 1,000,000. It's only how much consumption is being used. So that being said, the bigger the artwork, the more ink is being used. So in this case, on this design, how big did I make it?
So I want to make sure that we're showing you an accurate width here. This was printed at 11 inches wide. Obviously, the bigger it is, the more ink you're going to use.
11 inches. So I'm going to resize it to 11. And that's kind of the first step. How big is our artwork going to be? The grid that you see on screen here, this is the 14 by 16 platen. These are 1-inch squares divided up into quarters. So typically, just a little FYI, I place my art about 1 inch down, and that's usually where I start my printing. And then I hang my shirt off the edge of my collar, just off the edge of the platen, and that'll give you kind of a good placement for a standard front. So in this case, we printed on a dark colored t-shirt. Black color t-shirt would be, it's knocking out all of the black of the design and using the black of the back of the t-shirt as the black. But in this case, we're printing on red, so we're using dark color t-shirt. That way it'll print all colors, including black. Typically, the default setting works really well. I would say start there, especially when kind of quoting a customer or showing samples. Give them an example of a level 3. I think that's a really good place to start, especially if you've pre-treated proper and use a good, proper blank. We'll be talking more about that later. But in this case, level 5 is pretty much my default. I'll go from level 3 to level 5 usually all the time. I don't really mess with density so much. I do reduce the white area, however, to 4. Some people bump up the color a little bit, or maybe the white just a little bit. Here's a little FYI. Max white is level 6 and plus 10. So if you're doing more than that, and you've pre-treated properly and you're using a good quality shirt, you're just wasting white ink. You can't get whiter than already white is, so no sense in doing that. Frankly, I will very rarely use level 6, as we'll talk about more later. The more ink you consume, so level 5 is going to print, it's going to print white and then highlight white, and level 6 will print white, go back in, and then print white again. That is overkill. Very rarely do we need to use that. Let's get to the point of this video, and we're talking about the cost estimator tool. So a lot of questions about, it's costing me a lot of money to print on a dark color t-shirt. And the answer, and the reason that is likely, is because you're not doing your pre-production stuff correctly, you're not pre-treating properly, you're not using a good quality shirt. So if you do those things right, I'm going to show you what and how to set up your cost estimator tool so you can get an idea of what really you're consuming. So the way I have it, local settings is how many you're going to do. And it always makes sense to just have one, because you can multiply however many you're doing by your total here. So 1 is sufficient. The way you do it is you go into new preset. You can label it 1 shirt. Currency is US. Coefficient is 1. So your coefficient would label, say you were going to do 50 shirts, your coefficient could be 50. Ink cost. So there's a little debate on this now because ink has changed. White ink cost has gone up a little bit. And take a look at our ink cost. So color ink is still $2.17, but because white ink has been low in inventory, or because they're having inventory kind of supply chain issues because of the pandemic, they're flying it in from Japan, and now it costs us a little bit more. So white ink is going to be $230 as opposed to $217. So what we're going to do is we're going to average between $217 and $230 to figure out our ink cost. Normally, ink cost would be, we're going to label it 600 milliliters because that's how much you get. your cost of between 217 and 230. I just went with 223 and capacity 600 milliliters. So we increased costs just a little bit. And so that means you're paying 37 cents per milliliter to print. So on this job that we have here, if we do level 5, and we can say bump density up a little bit if you want, just to get an idea, let's estimate that job. Let's see how much that costs us at 11 inches wide. The job estimator is just that. It's an estimate, but it's a pretty doggone good one. We're using 7.56 milliliters. It's going to cost us $2.81. And then I usually factor maintenance and pretreat here. So for maintenance and pretreat, I just average about 75 cents per shirt. I think that's elevated. It's better to over-assume than under. But I like to get an idea of what is the cost that's coming out of the machine. You can factor in shirt cost if you want. You can factor in labor. You can factor in art charges. You can factor in all sorts of stuff. But what's important to me is knowing how much cost is coming out of the machine to produce a single shirt. And maintenance and pretreat, I like to factor at 75 cents. So with that being said, that shirt with maintenance and pretreat cost me $3.56.
You notice on this shirt, red shirt, that there's no staining. So the reason there would be staining is if you put down too much pretreat or if you use the wrong type of pretreat. And I use one of these three. Epson pretreat is terrific, doesn't stain a lot. You reduce the concentrate to make sure you have good equal parts or a good amount of pretreat as opposed to water. If you have too much pretreat, you're going to maybe see some staining. So you just reduce it a little bit. I've been using this universal pretreat a lot. This stuff's awesome. Super vibrant, bright colors. That's what's printed on that. But I just reduced it. This was probably 30% concentrate, 70% water, distilled water. And on my Mr. T1, I had the speed set 4 or 5. So I hit it really, really fast. Hit it really, really fast, mixed it just a little bit, and it was good to go. And if I'm doing, say, black shirt with these pretreats, and I want super white, vibrant prints, super white and bright colors, like this shirt here, look how white that is. That's level 5, folks. That's not level 6. That's level 5. No staining. Really nice. What I do there is I used universal pretreat. I mixed this 60-40, 60% water, 40% pretreat. And I went round trip 4. But the most important thing to making sure you're not spending too much money on ink, pretreat is important, but the most important thing is the shirt. And in this case, we're using a cotton heritage shirt. So think about what you're printing on. If you're finding that you're using level 6 a lot in Garment Creator under your print settings, that's going to use considerably more ink, and sometimes it doesn't even give you as good a result as, say, level 5 with the right quality shirt and the right pretreat application. So the moral of the story here, folks, is if you're spending a lot of money on ink, if your shirts aren't coming out that vibrant, the solution really is a couple things. Don't go to Garment Creator and try to put down more ink. That just costs more money. Do your pre-production stuff right. So use a good quality pretreat. Make sure you've pre-treated it thoroughly. Reduce it as necessary. Use universal or Epson pretreat, both really good things. But I think the number one thing and the most important thing is use a good quality shirt. Make sure your substrate is good quality so the ink will bond well to it. And you can reduce staining, you can use less ink, and you can get a higher, more vibrant color, vibrant result with less ink expense. So let's not overdo it. Let's not lay down too much ink. It's a waste. It's a waste of money. It's a waste all over the place. Do everything right. Save that money. So thanks for watching this Digital Monday. Join me next week to elaborate on this discussion where we're going to talk more about what types of shirts to use, how to reduce your costs even further. Make sure you subscribe. Thanks for watching.